Why was this so important to do here in Wilton with the people who you organized it with?
First of all, we had a fantastic steering committee made up of women who live in Wilton, Ridgefield, Reading, and Weston. So we felt that Wilton was simply the most central town between all of us that might get the most participation from our people. We wanted to do it at Wilton Town Hall because it's in a very public venue, and as you can see, it's right on Route 7, so we were hoping that passersby would see us and come out and support our cause.
Were you pleased with the turnout?
I was. I mean, obviously, you always want a packed house, but given how busy people's lives are, and it's a Sunday where people have soccer tournaments and things with their kids, and there are a million other rallies going on, which I'm very happy about, that there is so much support for this issue and that there are so many rallies. But yeah, I was happy to see the support that we got. Don't forget, we put this event together in a week. So the steering committee really rocked. They were a fantastic group of women to work with, and they really did a good job of getting good speakers and putting this program together.
So in a state like Connecticut that tends to run blue, with a legislature that has come out in support of abortion rights and reproductive rights, why was this an important thing in a state like Connecticut?
I feel very fortunate that we live in a state like Connecticut that does support a woman's right to choose, that does put plans in place. If someone comes from Texas or another state, those women will be protected, and that we don't live in a vigilante kind of state such as Texas. But this is a nationwide issue. We don't live in just our little state. We cross the border. And you don't want to have to tell your daughter when she's going to college that she can't go to UT, Texas, in Austin, because God forbid she gets pregnant, she's not going to be able to have an abortion there. The implications of this are so much greater. Plus, it also has an impact on who is governor. So in these conservative states, you're going to see more and more conservative governors put these rules into place. And the purpose is to drive out some of the moderate Democrats or liberal Democrats who live in their state to try to keep their state red. And that is just not okay. We must work that we can, do everything that we can to protect a woman's right to choose, regardless of what state they live in.
Part of this is not just about women and the right to choose. What other kind of message is behind what you are talking about today?
We have to be concerned about this chipping away at our right to privacy, because what does that mean and where does that end? So when we talk about the issue of body autonomy, that has a serious impact on trans people. Will they not be able to live the life that they feel that they should be leading? And you know what? It's not my decision, it's not your decision, it's nobody's decision to tell them what is their personal truth. The same thing with who a person loves. Is that going to be what's next, where we have the government intruding on who we love, making decisions as to who we can marry, who we want to be, how we want to present ourselves? And then something like abortion, which is a deeply personal medical choice that a woman needs to make, sacred between herself, maybe a partner, maybe not, and between a doctor, is something that she alone should have that right.
This is a very political issue. All of the speakers were Democrats. I know that there are Republicans in town and in the area who are not happy that they were not asked to participate. What do you say to that?
I'm very grateful that there are Republicans in our state who are pro-choice and who are willing to speak up. The problem that I have is I don't think that they're willing to speak up loud enough. It's great to come to an area where everyone is pro-choice and speak up. Among Democrats, obviously, that's something that mostly everyone supports, particularly since it's in our DNC platform. Republicans have the opposite in their platform. So until I start seeing those Republicans speaking up to their gubernatorial candidates, until I see them forming their own rallies where they stand up and speak for pro-choice, I don't feel it's necessary to come to a rally that is organized by a person who happens to be chair of their town Democratic committee.
Why was this particular rally an important place for you to be?
It's important to be wherever we can be on this, and not to just say that we're pro-choice anymore or we trust women and doctors and patients. It's important to fight. And so I'm here encouraging not just everyone to fight, but to hold other people accountable so that they don't just pay lip service to this. This is a really difficult moment. I'm not going to lie. This is really bad.
Come November, what's going to happen in Connecticut?
That we're not safe. And any suggestion that, no, we're good, Roe's been codified, we just passed a new law, don't worry about it, is nonsense, because Roe is not the last step. If Roe falls, that's not the end, that's the beginning. Not just in our fight, but for the people that want to fundamentally remake our lives and turn the clock back more than 50 years, right? Hundreds of years. And so they're going to come for us, and we have to defend, not just our laws, but people, families, patients, women, doctors, clinics, practices, hospitals. I mean, this is going to be an all-out battle.
A legacy of trying to impose their beliefs onto the choices of others. And unfortunately, my party has not done a good job of drawing a line in the sand and saying you're either with us or you are against us. We have tolerated talk of a middle ground, of restrictions here and there and notification requirements, when the truth is much simpler. You either believe that the choices a pregnant person makes are made by the patient themselves, or you believe that they're made by the government. There's no middle ground on this issue. I'll close by saying this. While the rest of the country is moving backwards, Connecticut, thankfully we are poised to move forward. Just a few weeks ago in the state Senate, we took up legislation championed by Representative Blumenthal and Representative Gilchrist that provides legal protections for pregnant people from Texas who might come to Connecticut seeking the full spectrum of reproductive care. And we expanded the number of medical providers who can offer an abortion, because for all of the fear-mongering around this procedure, it's safer than a colonoscopy. We are moving forward in Connecticut, but we can't let up. This decision, it didn't happen by accident. It happened because of decades and decades of marching and rallying and petitioning, marching right into the voting booth, and after Election Day, installing judges who believe in a backwards vision for how America ought to go forward. We've got to do the same. In fact, we've got to do better. We've got to out-organize the so-called pro-life side. We've got to march from here straight into the voting booth in November, and after Election Day, as importantly, more importantly, hold your elected officials accountable. Make sure that you remind them there is no middle ground on this issue. They are either with us or they are against us. Thank you all so much for being here.
I agree with Will. I think we have the best senator in the world, Richard Blumenthal. I first met him actually 20 years ago at a pro-choice rally, and here we are still today. I want the time to come that this doesn't have to happen anymore, but until then, I know he's going to fight the good fight for us. I give you Senator Blumenthal.
Please join me in a big round of applause for Gail, who has really put this rally together, and she has been in this fight for a long time. Now, let me just say a word to the men who are here, the men of Connecticut, the men of America. You can't sit this one out. This is your fight, too. This is every bit your fight, even though you are here, and I have been supporters of brave, bold, strong, smart women who have led the reproductive rights fight over decades. And there are a lot of people here, and thank you for coming, who have never known the America that we knew before Roe v. Wade. I clerked for Justice Blackmun in 1974, the year after Roe. He wrote the opinion. We thought it was done, settled, and here we are. This has been a fight for me over those decades, and with the help of our colleagues in 1990, we made Roe the law of our state. We wrote it into our statutes. We enacted it in 1990. And Matt Blumenthal, not Richard Blumenthal, and Jillian Gilchrist, and the members of the state legislature who are here today, thank you so much for leading the nation. Connecticut is at the tip of the spear. We're at the forefront of leading the nation in showing how we can preserve choice at the state level. It is a magnificent accomplishment, and thank you so much to Sean, to William, to all of our state legislators, Stephanie, Will, all of you. But here's what Mitch McConnell said just last week. The minority leader of the United States Senate said he's open to a nationwide ban, a ban criminalizing abortion. Even worse than overturning Roe v. Wade, a ban on abortion actually would override our state laws. This fight is really a matter of life and death. And you are the ones who are going to win it. You are the ones who are going to stop Mitch McConnell from becoming the next majority leader and imposing Mitch McConnell's will on the nation. But it's not just Mitch McConnell's will. We know in 23 states, bans on abortion will go into effect. You've heard all this already. I'm not going to belabor a lot of what you've heard. But just to say to you that you are leading here in Connecticut. We can be really proud of our Connecticut state legislature, but we need to take the spirit and energy and fight that you're showing today in states across the nation where pro-choice senators, pro-choice members of Congress are on the ballot. I can tell you who they are. In states like New Hampshire and Georgia and Arizona and Nevada, and hopefully in Ohio and North Carolina and Wisconsin. If we win those seats, we can eliminate the filibuster for reproductive rights and pass the Women's Health Protection Act. Pass the Women's Health Protection Act. Now, I'll just finish on this note. You know, when I wrote the Women's Health Protection Act in 2013, almost 10 years ago, modeling it after the one we did here in Connecticut, protecting a woman's right to make these choices about when and whether to have children. The thought of Roe v. Wade being overturned was unimaginable. Nobody thought a United States Supreme Court would ever overturn this well-established legal precedent. And of course, the nominees for the United States Supreme Court told us they would respect those precedents, right?
Liars.
And they have destroyed a chunk of the Supreme Court's credibility as a result. But we now know that 2013 is real in the need for this measure. It is absolutely essential that we do it at the congressional level, that the Women's Health Protection Act, as it is right now, I'm not in favor of dumbing it down, diluting it, compromising on that basic right. We need the Women's Health Protection Act enacting Roe into law. And you are going to do it because it's not going to be a top-down movement. These leaders are so inspiring. They are here, and this picture is worth 1,000 words to say to you, they are going to continue this fight. But it is your energy, your spirit, your commitment that is going to make the difference, your support for those candidates who have the guts and the grit, the courage to step forward. This issue is not a slam dunk. The American people are for choice, 70%. But they need to step forward and show the voters, put reproductive rights on the ballot this November and win this November for the women and the men of America. Thank you so much for being here. Thanks for your fight and all your help and support. You are the way we're going to win. Thank you.
One of the reasons we're so lucky to live in Connecticut
Connecticut is because we have such exemplary leadership from the top down. No one has been a stronger supporter of women than our own Lieutenant Governor, Susan Bysiewicz.
Gail, thank you so much. What a pleasure to be with all of you on this beautiful Sunday afternoon, but at the same time, what a dark time in our country's history it is, and for this purpose. But here we are together, and I am so delighted to be here on behalf of myself, but also Governor Ned Lamont, because a week ago, with many of the people who are standing right here, Governor Lamont signed into law the Reproductive Freedom Act, yes, which protects medical providers who provide care to women who come to our state from out of state, and it expands access to health care for women in our state and outside of our state. And we should be so proud to lead the way, because other states are watching. That bill signing made national news, and other states that care about protecting women's reproductive rights are going to follow suit. And we are, yes, we should clap for that. And we led the way in the early 1990s when Connecticut enshrined Roe versus Wade into our state law. And thank you, Senator Blumenthal, for your leadership on that when you were in the legislature, and thank you for your leadership down in Washington. Here's the thing, that it's not enough to say we're safe here in Connecticut because we have our Roe versus Wade law in our state statutes. And here's why it's not safe until it's in our state constitution, and I think a lot of people here support amending our state constitution to put it into our state law. Can't wait till that's on the ballot. But it's not enough to say, well, we have that law in Connecticut. And that's what candidates are saying right now. And it's not enough because, as our legislative partners will tell you, every year there are attacks on our Roe versus Wade law. So we cannot rest, even though we are in this beautiful state that protects gay marriage, that protects women's reproductive health care. We have to be vigilant. And that's why our votes are so important. And so when you have the opportunity to meet candidates, especially the ones that are not standing right here, you need to ask them, will you veto any bill that comes to your desk that would cut back on our Roe versus Wade law? Because there's a person running for governor, and it's not Ned Lamont, who won't answer that question. So we need to be very specific. We need to do our research, and we need to ask candidates for state office, for federal office, exactly where they stand. Because this isn't just about our reproductive freedom. It is about our freedom to marry who we choose, right? To make decisions about our life. So many rights are on the ballot, potentially on the chopping block. So thank you for your vigilance. Thank you for what you are doing. And make no mistake as well, you should research who people supported when there were nominees before our United States Supreme Court, because I will tell you right now that Mr. Stefanowski was a big supporter of Brett Kavanaugh's nomination to our United States Supreme Court, right? And look where we are. So thank you all so much for coming out. And it is such an honor for Governor Lamont and I to represent you every day in Hartford. We are so grateful. Thank you.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. And I wholeheartedly agree with you. And we must have pro-choice Republicans speak out and hold those people to the fire, their feet to the fire, so that we can create pro-choice nationally without these kind of issues that keep popping up. Our next speaker, if you know her at all, Ann Hughes, she signs all of her emails peace. Yet I have to say, I don't know anyone who's fiercer about protecting the rights of her residents. So with that, I give you Representative Ann Hughes.
No justice, no peace. No justice, no peace. Our bodies, our choice. Our bodies, our choice. Welcome to the season of rage. I'm State Representative Ann Hughes of the 135th District. That's Easton, Weston, and Reading. And while I want to give in to a sustained moment of howling grief, instead, I ask you to join me in a moment of silence for our neighbors in Buffalo, another community targeted by white supremacy terrorism in yet another mass shooting in a neighborhood grocery store. Please join me. No justice, no peace. And I implore you to get good and uncomfortable with the storm that's raging upon us now. We knew this was coming. That's why so many of us ran for office in 2018 and again in 2020, knocking on doors throughout the state. And women and young people opening their doors to us with tears in their eyes during the Brett Kavanaugh hearings, and then again in the wake of Ruth's passing. We knew this moment was coming. We knew our Supreme Court would be consigned into the hands of minority extremist supremacy. And yet, you elected us for such a time as this. Our rights have always been fragile. We've relied on a balance of power between the three branches of government: the representative body, the executive body, and the Supreme Court. We expect these democratic institutions to protect us, but we always knew that the goal of the white supremacist right-wing minority was to install their extremists on the court and to undermine and strip the hard-won and hard-fought protections of our grandmothers: the right to vote, the right to bodily autonomy, the right to privacy, the right to contraception, abortion care, health care, and the right to have our elections count. Abuse is about power and control. And mobilizing this resistance, this season of rage, is not just about protecting our human rights. It's about ending the abuse of power and control over women, over low wealth and poor people, especially low wealth communities, our LGBTQ folk, our threats to trans folks, our brown and black communities, the people most harmed by criminalizing bodily autonomy, criminalizing reproductive health care, criminalizing the right to privacy, the right to intimacy, the right to private medical decisions with our healthcare providers. We need to mobilize solidarity with all these communities that are most harmed and fight for everyone now. And like Senator Blumenthal, we need the men to show up. We need the youth to show up. We need to take some to the streets. No justice, no peace. Our bodies, our choice. So our legislative colleagues and I got to work in fierce determination at the very beginning of this short session. We formed the Reproductive Rights Caucus and decided to fight the legal bullying of Texas, SB 8, and other states and courts' abuse of power with Connecticut's legal firepower. We based the Connecticut's Reproductive Freedom Defense Act on two precedents. Yes, the 1970 Griswold versus Connecticut Supreme Court case, granting the constitutional right to privacy, within which to enshrine our reproductive freedom and contraception. Why did we have to use this Supreme Court case ensuring the right to privacy? Because we have yet to pass the Equal Rights Amendment to the Constitution, so we have no constitutional right to equal protection as women, except through the constitutional right to privacy already granted to men. Think about that. We've had to use a legal, universal right granted to men because we have not passed the ERA. It is crazy talk. It is absolutely crazy talk. So you heard Connecticut's legislative predecessors, including my constituent and former legislator and judge Doug Mintz, who wishes he could be here today, but he is sick, along with then State Senator Richard Blumenthal, helped ensure we codified Roe v. Wade in Connecticut's Constitution in 1990. And those elected leaders deserve a big shout out for their important work in future-proofing Connecticut's policies to grant reproductive freedom and protection. And we also thank them for passing the torch to this generation of elected leaders who are speaking for ourselves, elected by you for such a time as this. It's not enough to build a legal moat around Connecticut, protecting those inside Connecticut from criminal pursuit. We must build a bridge to our neighbors and communities beyond and within Connecticut who are seeking refuge, and be that beacon to those disempowered, desperate, and without any real choice. Connecticut is one of 16 states that protects Medicaid families who seek abortion care to receive that care. Connecticut pays what the feds refuse to reimburse for health care, thanks to the Hyde Amendment. You've elected these policymakers to lead in such a time as this. And we passed the Reproductive Freedom Defense Bill that the governor signed last week. The other precedent that we thought about in this Reproductive Justice Caucus was the Fugitive Slave Act that was repealed in 1864 that provided for the seizure and return of runaway enslaved to escape from one state or another into federal territory. So we put up a defensive shield. Texas, if you come after your people in Connecticut, we will counter-sue. Our Reproductive Freedom Defense Act is Connecticut's hell no to states extending their criminal and vigilante chasing of reproductive refugees and helpers into Connecticut. We not only expand access to abortion care, allowing APRNs and PAs to give this care, we will protect and defend anyone in Connecticut or coming into Connecticut supporting a loved one, friend, family, or stranger seeking abortion care. Their provider will protect their health practitioner. Don't mess with Connecticut, Texas. So we must stay in the streets. We must shout from the rooftops, from every capital and town square across this nation. Welcome to the season of rage. This season of rage must be mobilized with our colleagues marching beside you to use this moment to bring in the fourth branch of power, the public will. We will not be fugitives of justice. We will make the policies that withstand the bullying and dismantling by the Supreme Court, the systems by default that uphold the patriarchy that harms all of us, especially harms vulnerable and marginalized neighbors. And we will defend our equal rights. We will defend and protect our reproductive health care because our free society depends on our public mobilization and power. We must use this rage to fuel our determination to show up in every election, to run for office ourselves, to show up and make policies for our children and the next generation so they do not give in to despair, because action is our hope. Our marching feet, our collective chanting, as long as you stay in the streets, I will be right here beside you, amplifying your voices through real change policy you can be proud of for such a time as this. No justice, no peace. Our bodies, our choice. Thank you for showing up, Fairfield County.
I have to say I love when Ann gets fierce.
We have to get out there every single day between now and Election Day and support people, Democrat and Republican, who are good on this issue, because this is not just an issue you can be good at. This is a fundamental right in America. And I'm sorry to be a little bit more political than other people, but guess what? This is political because this is our rights. And this is not a women's issue, it's an American issue. So stand up for American rights, stand up for America, and let's make sure we do everything we can to protect that right here in Connecticut. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Representative Scanlon. Someone who certainly understands the legal implications of all this is Eric Russell, who is our Democratic endorsed candidate for treasurer. Eric, I invite you up to speak. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And thank you all for being here today. This is a incredibly important moment in our state and in our country. And Megan, thank you so much for your powerful story. That's what this is really all about. I had some things I was planning to say and you just blew that up. And you know, I also, to see so many people here, to see our young folks out rallying around this issue, to see our grandparents who have fought this fight for us before, outstanding together again. It's the constant reminder that we cannot be complacent and that every generation has an obligation to stand up and fight for the rights that we hold so dear. So thank you all for being here for that. I think no one wanted this moment to happen, obviously, but I don't think many of us are surprised. This has been a strategic plan by the GOP, appointing conservative, anti-choice justices to ultimately roll back our rights. And we're this moment talking about this attack on women, attack on women's right to choose, attack on to make their own healthcare decisions. But it's the start of it, right? We've also seen what this decision references, and it's not cloaked at all. It's about rolling back right to contraception. It's about rolling back the right to access IVF. There's references about interracial marriage and marriage equality. Again, all of the things that we have fought over and over and over again for. And we also need to be clear about who this would most impact. We are very fortunate here in Connecticut that we have incredible representative at the top, at the helm, who have fought for legal protections for our communities and for women in our community. But across the country, particularly women of color, poor women, the trans community, these are women in rural communities that have less access to healthcare as it is. These are the women that are going to be most impacted by this terrible decision. And so we need to stand up here in Connecticut and we need to fight here, but we also need to make our voices heard around the country. And I'm here with my sneakers on today. I'm ready to rally, and let's keep going.
Thank you, Eric. We are so fortunate to have another woman who's willing to come forward and speak her truth. Carolyn Hilbiarka, did I pronounce that close to correct? Is here to share her story. Please give her a warm welcome.
Thank you all for coming. Thank you, Gail, for including me. I'm Capsule. What does that mean? Hello, my name is Carolyn Hilbiarka. I'm a poet, activist, wife, mother, businesswoman, and Weston, Connecticut resident. In 1967, my biological mother was pregnant, and her only legal option was adoption. As a result, she was forced to carry the pregnancy to term. I was sold anonymously for $560 in the state of Connecticut. My mother was a typical young girl. She was raised by her Finnish father and her stepmother in Watertown, Connecticut. At the time, reproductive education was taboo, and birth control and abortion were illegal. The only option for a pregnancy was to carry it to term. My biological mother met my father at University of Connecticut. After becoming pregnant and declining the invitation to marry, she was sent to a home for unwed mothers to be calmed down. It was likely that she was medicated, which affects the fetus. I was born with a subluxated hip and wore a metal brace from the ages of 1 to 5 years old. As the requirement for admittance to the unwed mother's home, my biological mother signed adoption papers. But once I was born, she had a change of heart. She was discharged from the hospital with a newborn. She could not go back to school. She was unwelcome by family and without a home. She didn't have work and she was postpartum. She got by, staying with friends and doing the best she could with the newborn. It lasted about a week. She returned to the hospital where it is recorded she had a nervous breakdown. She was then committed to a mental institution and I was sent to a foster home. I was given the name Maggie. This is not just my story. This happened to thousands of babies. It was given a name, the baby scoop era. I was in a foster home for 5 months while my biological mother was fighting to get me back. She had no support, no money, no family. Eventually, the state of Connecticut sued my mother for child abandonment. She felt her only option was to sign the release papers for my anonymous adoption. She never saw my first tooth, my first steps, or heard my first words. My adopted mom told me that the first time we met was in a social services office in New Haven, Connecticut, where she purchased me for the $560. I still have the receipt. Not having the option to terminate an unplanned pregnancy ruined my biological mother's life, and it still affects mine. As a small child, I had insomnia. I was reliving the trauma of infant separation. During those 5 months in foster care, I was given a series of x-rays that damaged my reproductive organs and most of my eggs. When my husband and I began to start a family, my internal issues led to a ruptured ectopic pregnancy, which almost killed me. I was fortunate enough to sustain a pregnancy and now have a teenage daughter. But to give her a brother and sister took 8 years of fertility failures, several miscarriages, and 1 abortion. There was a chromosomal issue with the fetus that could have resulted in stillbirth, or worse, if the baby was born, the baby would not have survived. Unlike my mother, I was fortunate to have the choice to have an abortion. After success with an egg donor, I safely had twins. I was able to create my family after years of struggling with fertility issues. Thank you. During those struggles, the root cause of my suffering was unknown to me, as I was an anonymous adoption with zero information about my circumstances. I finally met my biological father when I was 42 years old. Would you believe his apartment was 6 blocks from mine on the Upper East Side of Manhattan? That is true. He helped me unravel our story, and I realized the myth of myself was a lie. The teenage mother in trouble story that I was told was fabricated by the social services agency to facilitate my anonymous adoption. There was a post-adoptive file in the New Haven Orphan Asylum with documents that showed my father searched for me for 25 years. All true. Laws and public opinion rendered my biological mother unfit to raise me and caused her a lifetime of pain. I have never met or found her still to this day. It is disturbing to know I was a commodity, anonymously sold. I walked around with the feeling of a can of coins shaking within me until I learned my truth. Having choices and writing poetry got me through this personal strife. I would like to share a poem from my book, which is called Things I Don't Want to Talk About. The poem goes, crisis. It was a crisis. I was a crisis. I am good in a crisis. The crisis ruined lives. What is a crisis? It is a stage in a sequence of events at which the trend of all future events, for better or worse, is determined. My crisis divided people. I was the crisis. I am still in crisis. Every woman should be able to choose her fate. Every woman should have education to understand her own body and make choices. Everyone should be able to craft their families as they see fit. Reproductive health personifies life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Thank you all.
Our next speaker is Representative Stephanie Thomas. I've gotten to know her in the past couple of weeks, so she's our endorsed candidate for the Secretary of State's race. And the one thing that I really appreciate about her, along with her intelligence that's beyond reproach, will do great things for us as a constitutional officer. So please welcome Representative Stephanie Thomas.
Thank you, Gail. But she can't work a microphone. I feel like we're all in crisis. I sat in the parking lot today trying to figure out what I would say. And when you're about the 10th speaker, you know, everything's been said before. And I was thinking about all of my college years, in my 20s, my 30s, all the rallies I went to, and we would chant, "The people united will never be defeated. The people united will never be defeated." But I feel like we, the people, have been defeated. Issue after issue, be it climate change, be it gun violence prevention, and now choice. I cannot even remember all the times my mother would say to me and my sisters how lucky we were to be alive at a time where we could make this choice for ourselves, because that was not true when she is for herself. They were not as easy. And to be here today, I think, is a reminder there is no such thing as settled law. A law is a piece of paper that people, humans, create and sign, and it can be reversed, changed. Sleep at the wheel. We are the people who united, defeated, but we are not united. We leave too much to chance. Most of you know in Wilton, I ran for office. It wasn't something I thought I would do, but it felt so important that I left my comfort zone, and I'm standing here today because it's that important. We all have to risk everything, not just on election day, every day. There is no such thing as settled law. Whatever you believe in, you have to fight for. I'm thinking about all the laws that have been passed that do protect us. And what happened during the era where those laws were passed? People were out in the streets. They were not liking and disliking on Facebook. They were not voting and then leaving everything to chance. It all on the line. It's all on the line. Before it's too late. You've heard, I say this a lot when I'm campaigning. By the time you read about something in the newspaper, it's already too late. I'm sorry. By the time the news reports it, it's already been voted on. The bills have already been drafted. Those elected officials are already in power. We have to think better. We have to think smarter. We have to be much more strategic. As a candidate, I'll tell you a secret. We don't get a lot of hard questions. We got to start asking better questions of our candidates. I shouldn't say this at the beginning of my own election campaign, but we have to hold people much more accountable. We cannot just accept the Facebook post, the newspaper article, the whatever, the people who know everything. We can't just accept what they say, because if we did, I wouldn't even be standing here today in front of you. I have broken the odds because I care about these issues. And
Speaker is Representative Amy Berger Garofalo, who represents Richfield. Yeah, you could give her a woohoo! Here you go.
Thank you. We're going to put this. See? You were wrong. It's a trick. Okay, so she'll be right here. Unlike the courageous and beautiful Megan and Carolyn, I am an accidental abortion storyteller. When I was 18 years old, my husband, as I like to call my dear ex, my husband and I found ourselves within a pregnancy we were not ready for. We never regretted that choice. We never regretted that choice that we made, but we also never talked about it. We didn't talk about it much together. So the opposition was telling us that because there were no reports of any wrongdoing, there were no complaints made to any state office, whatever imaginary state office they were talking about, that there was no way that there was a case of someone who was not happy with the choice they had either been talked into or talked out of. I didn't swear.
I did.
I saw a couple of faces. We were at a Zoom meeting and I did see a couple of faces mouthing some of the words that I was thinking. But I thought it was time to push back. And I said, you know what? I had an abortion. And I told them my story and I said, I walked through a line of protesters grabbing at my arms and telling me that I was a murderer. And I went in anyway. And when it was done, I didn't talk about it. And I wasn't ashamed of my choice, but the stigma around abortion is real. And we talk about it now, and we have these brave women and folks coming forward to tell their stories, and it's normalizing it a little. Man, I wish I had some sort of way that I could calm down. And I had Susan Coco in the car, and she calmed me right down. But I was getting anxious driving here. And I talked about it multiple times, but there's a very real stigma around talking about your abortion. 34 years ago, I went to my very first pro-choice march. And I went there with my mom. My amazing mother, who took me to multiple rallies for multiple reasons, but made very clear that attending pro-choice marches was not optional in my house. And my mother is actually standing here on this lawn today. And this is the first time that I have talked about my abortion in front of her since the day after my abortion. Now
Listen, guys, who is a former Triangle Community Center board member, as well as a current candidate for state rep for the 143rd district. Sorry.
Good afternoon, everybody. I am here on behalf of Triangle Community Center as well, and Colin Hostin, its board president, wanted me to share this, that while this is an insidious attack on women, it is also an attack on all people, because women's rights are human rights. And the LGBTQ plus community isn't, quote, next, it is now, and I want to speak about that a little bit today. We can't fight on behalf of one group without fighting for justice for all, and as Colin says, TCC is prepared to join this fight for women's rights. So I wanted to share that because this is something that I think our LGBTQ, many of us in it have been fighting for this, for the right to choose, for reproductive freedom our whole lives, and I'm really happy that especially our cis brothers are, because it means so much to me and especially with the folks who've been talking about trans youth. Yesterday, I saw a couple signs that said, "I can't believe my mother had to fight for this, and now here I'm out here too." And this is exactly how I feel as an LGBTQ person of a certain age who never thought I'd be able to be married until I was at least in my 60s or 70s, and here I am. Amazing, amazing. And the fact that a government wants to repeal my marriage, each and every one of you who stand up for them every single day and love them and support them and tell them that they have a life that can never be taken from them. And we need to be their ally. And I'll tell you a little bit why. We have some folks in this country weaponizing state legislatures. I know you've read about it. They're weaponizing them against our children. These are the same people doing this in these state legislatures, like repealing laws women's health care and rights. They're taking away the rights to health care for trans. We all have a right, and we have the liberty to choose our destinies. And so I'll leave you with this. When I was at the rally yesterday, I saw this little one on the shoulders. And this little one was given the mic, the bullhorn, and said, "We won't go back." And everyone said it back to her. And I think about that, and I think about the fact that this little one may grow up in a world with less rights than I had as a 20-year-old, and we can't let that happen. We cannot let that happen. We will not go back. And I think about this little one and about how this is going to be a fight that she has to fight, not only her grandparent. So when we go to this November, the ballot box, everything is on. Some of us, not only our marriages are on the line as well as our reproductive freedom, but our marriages are on the line twice because they're also apparently coming for Loving v. Virginia. So we know that it's not even telegraphed. This is the playbook. Again, these folks are singing from the same hymnal. If you just watch what's happening in state legislatures, stand against this. And I think that where we're moving to is to take more of a stand for our trans youth as well. So I just want to thank you all today for being allies to our community, knowing we're in this fight with you, knowing we are right there, knowing that we too have abortions. And access to health care is not only a human right, but it's one of the biggest issues in our community. Of all genders is the right we're going to defend. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Dominique. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization that's made up of women and men. And thankfully, they have chosen a position on this issue. And here to talk about it is Celeste Lacroix from Westport League of Women Voters.
You had some wonderful speakers, and I'm not going to be so wonderful because I really hate doing this. But we have a series of positions level and the state level, and this position is at the top of our list. Voters' guides. If a candidate refuses to answer a question, we leave it blank. And if a candidate refuses to be in a forum, we will have an empty chair and announce who those people are. Thank you. And remember to vote.
Thank you, Celeste. Been an advocate for all of us for so many years, and I'm so pleased to have her speak today. Thank you, Cece.
Thanks, Gail. Thanks for the clap. Wow, awesome. Hometown advantage, I guess. Listen, I'm wearing green, and I'm wearing green because it is the international color of choice. And I cannot believe that we have a country that is not going to be on par with other countries around the world who have already codified this into their constitutions. It is not acceptable. You have heard so many wonderful things from everyone. So, I just forgot what I was going to say because I wasn't planning on that clap. Okay. So, remember, our choice is an economic choice, education, and our bodies. All of those things are affected. I remembered. Okay, good. What I was going to say is, when you need to vote into office the people who have stood up and said, unified, we will protect a woman's choice. And not just a woman's choice, but LGBTQ, trans, voting, all of the things that are on the ballot. So thank you very much for being here. I really appreciate you.
Thank you, Cece. Okay, one last quick personal story and then I'll let you guys go. Should walk over here. I grew up with a mom who in the 70s was very much what we used to call back then a woman's liber. She supported our rights. She thought a woman should be able to be whatever they want to be, pro-choice. She was the woman who my friends and my sisters went to when they needed to be taken for abortions because she didn't question them. She just took them and held their hand, and that was that. Over the years, my mother became more and more conservative in her thoughts and her beliefs. And she voted for he who I will not name. So she called me up last week, completely stunned. She said, Gail, how could this have happened in this country? This is not Gilead. How could this have happened to our country? And I said, well, Mom, that's what happens when you vote for a man who thinks it's okay to grab a woman by the kitty cat. So keep that in mind. Go out and vote. Make sure you vote for pro-choice candidates. I thank you all for coming. I thank the steering committee and all the speakers today who were able to get this together within a week. Please be patient for the shuttle bus. And thank you all for up and letting your voices be heard for choice. Thank you.